Here is my presentation on McCarthyism, a step backwards in America's history. McCarthyism is a campaign against Americans that were believed to be involved in communist activities in the U.S. between 1950 and 1954. So after World War II, the Red Scare came along and a lot of people were afraid of communism. We just finished World War II, got rid of Hitler, and Americans were more aware of politics in Europe and Russia than they were before. Communism was known as something bad, and no one in the United States wanted to be associated with it. Because of this, a lot of people started betraying their friends and the people they knew so they wouldn't get in trouble themselves. So here's a little background before McCarthyism started. During World War II, obviously, we were allies with the Russians. We were trying to defeat Germany, Italy, and then after, we kind of went our different ways. We believed in a democracy, and they kind of leaned toward a communist society. When this happened, people were scared. They didn't know who to trust. They didn't know who not to trust. And most people knew that spies were in the U.S., and they didn't want to get in trouble for this or that. So communism frightened a lot of people into doing things that they wouldn't usually do. So here we see a man, Joseph McCarthy. He's a Republican senator from Wisconsin, and he was kind of fed up with everything that was going on, and he believed that if you're communist, you should get out of the country. He doesn't want those people in the U.S., so he set out on a mission to get those people out of America or just ruin their lives so they would have no position and no influence on getting other people to be like they were. So with power, he tracked down people that he thought were suspicious or showed an interest in communism, and he basically destroyed their lives by ruining what they had. And most of the time he had no evidence, but he had power, and that made people really scared because they didn't know what would come next. So obviously, from what we know, McCarthy's motive was to eliminate all communism that was in the United States. Because so many citizens of the U.S. were scared, they kind of let Joseph McCarthy do what he was doing. They hoped to stay out of the mess, away from the communism, let him eradicate it from the U.S., and just hope that it didn't get too bad to where it started another war. The goals were pretty simple for Mr. McCarthy. He wanted to eliminate all thoughts and acts of communism in the United States. Because many actors and creative thinkers tend to be liberal, McCarthy's team went after people in Hollywood. They had a Hollywood blacklist that denied employment to screenwriters, actors, directors, musicians, and other American entertainment professionals. Sadly, many people were too scared to stop McCarthy because of the momentum he had, and because of that, many people who worked so hard had lost their careers, even though they had done nothing to deserve it. So the achievements of McCarthyism didn't really go as Joseph had planned. He planned that he would get out there, find those people who were creating a mess in the United States, and be a hero. But he went about it wrong. He falsely accused people with no evidence. And in the beginning, because people were scared, they went along with it. They said, well, he's doing something that's better than nothing. And they felt bad for the people that were getting accused, but they were just glad it wasn't them. And then towards the end, they realized this dude is messed up. What he's doing is not correct. So Mr. McCarthy went around looking for people who were suspicious. Maybe their father had showed an interest in communism 10 years before, and he would track them down, and they could be totally unrelated and had no interest in it now, and they would be accused, and it was unfair for a lot of people, and everyone was worried because they thought that if they spoke up, McCarthy would think that they liked communism, so they stayed quiet, and it just was a real mess. In a trial in West Virginia on February 9th in 1950, Joseph McCarthy held a piece of paper in his hand and said this: "I have here in my hand a list of 205 that were known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party, and who nevertheless are still working and shaping the policy of the State Department." By this time, everyone knew that this dude was whacked up. He must have had a screw loose. In the beginning, they trusted him, but now they knew that he really was not doing any good. As time wore on, he was stripped of his positions. He was viewed as someone no longer respected, and some would say that he didn't exactly end in the best way. At the end of the day, a lot of people lost their jobs, their belongings, their friends, and most importantly, their rights. Most people viewed America as a country where you could speak the truth, and here were all these people being falsely accused and being guilty because a man in power said they were, and that totally defeated the purpose of freedom of speech. And it scared some people because they thought of how unevenly and how badly treated some were and how it might happen again. The lessons we learned from this were that sometimes when situations are bad and someone comes to power, it's not exactly always the good thing. And in this case, obviously, it wasn't. And Joseph McCarthy gained too much power, and he had momentum, and he wasn't stopped, and it didn't end so well for a lot of people because they were scared, they didn't know what to do, and it just turned out to be a pretty bad situation overall. So here are my citations, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening.